There we go. Good to see you. We have people off in various parts of the world on various things. I think Subhash is at some Nyingma retreat or something, and other people are off for various reasons. So let's begin. Try to bring our mind away from whatever samsaric thoughts that we were having and set a good motivation for the teaching. Sangye chodang soki chognam la changchu bardu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chunyen gipe sognam ki drola penchir sangye drupa sho. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create, through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrating beings. Sangye chodang soki chognam la jangchu baru dagni kyapsu chi dagi chunyen gipe sognam ki trola penche sangye drupa sho. So it's interesting, His Holiness some years ago suggested that if you go back, Luis, to just that third line where it says Dagi Chunyen Gipe Sognam Ki, that Sog is written Tsog, which means the collection. It used to be Sog, Sogs, which means etc., meaning due to the merits of listening to the Dharma and so forth, like the other perfections. But His Holiness changed it to Sog, which sounds the same, almost the same, which means collections, which we're familiar with because we've been talking about the two collections all throughout the course, the collection of merit and the collection of wisdom. So now to offer a mandala. By offering this ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, and adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and moon, visualized as a Buddha realm, may all migrators enjoy a pure realm. O holy and perfect Lamas, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma. So vast and profound also is sort of pointing toward these two collections. The vast refers to the vast activities of the bodhisattvas on the conventional realm, the five perfections. And the profound Dharma refers to the rain of profound Dharma means the teachings on emptiness. Please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained or subdued. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Okay, thank you. Good to see you. Anna's joined us. So let's begin with a little meditation. Hopefully, by continuing to do this every week, and hopefully yourself, on those, when you do your morning meditations or your evening meditations, whenever you do meditate, if you can try to set a motivation like this before you begin, then that will be much more powerful in terms of accumulating merit and wisdom. So sit comfortably. We're going to first try to eliminate extraneous conceptualizations from our mind, extraneous thoughts, by watching our breathing. And keeping it in mind with the mental factor mindfulness, attended by the mental factor of introspection, watching whether you are actually doing the meditation, whether you're creeping into the area of multitasking, kind of half watching the breathing and half thinking about something else. If your mind urges you to be, thinking about something else in addition to the breathing, remind yourself, I can think about that later. If you've been successful to calm the mind a little that way, now bring your attention to the much more subtle object of observation, your mental consciousness, which we first have to locate, so to speak, by noticing the contents. The thought of me as a meditator, that's an object that's appearing in your consciousness sometimes. It's all the time, but we don't necessarily focus on it all the time. Memories, plans. Thoughts about the present, maybe feelings in your body, worries about your health, about the world. Sometimes visual, sometimes audio, maybe it's like sounds. All of these are like clouds in an otherwise clear sky, the clear light nature of your mind, the conventional clear light nature of your mind. I add conventional because the ultimate clear light nature of the mind is emptiness. This clear light nature is a lack of any obstruction to the arisal or reabsorption of mental events into the consciousness. In analogy to uncompounded space, which is a lack of obstructing contact, physical contact. Just the awareness of this and recognizing it, analyzing it, what it means is that we can, as there is no obstruction to arising of new mental events, we can, through cultivating, through practicing, through meditating again and again on various qualities, we can make them forefront in our mind rather than becoming habituated with anger and attachment and jealousy and depression. We can develop good qualities. We can not only suppress our faulty states of mind, but we can actually apply antidotes so that they are temporarily gone. We can apply temporal antidotes like attachment, antidotes to attachment, antidotes to hatred, and so forth. Or we can apply an ultimate antidote to those faulty states of mind, which is a meditation on emptiness, the emptiness of oneself, the emptiness of other phenomena. So this is one kind of jewel, wish-fulfilling jewel, that we can feel very fortunate to have. And the fact that we can recognize this now is due to this auspicious moment of having a life of leisure and endowment on top of this developmental Buddha nature, which is like a wish-fulfilling gem. Also, this life of leisure and endowment, more valuable, it says in the Lanrim, than universes, world systems, trichiliocosms full of wish-fulfilling jewels. Because even if we possess those, they wouldn't be able to do what a perfect human rebirth can do, which is the collection of merit and wisdom for a continuity of human lifetimes in the future. A wish-fulfilling gem can't provide rebirth, So when you have problems in your life, Lama Zopa Rinpoche often advised, you can think, oh, this is nothing. I have this wish-fulfilling jewel, this life of leisure and endowment that's more valuable than a wish-fulfilling jewel that could provide friendship and wealth and power and pleasure of the senses this lifetime. But I have something much more valuable. Why is it valuable? Well, as a basis to collect merit and wisdom. For what reason? To achieve liberation or enlightenment, escape from cyclic existence, or full enlightenment of a Buddha. The Buddha advised his intelligent disciples not to be satisfied with his Hinayana teachings alone, not just those alone, which they should know and practice and so forth, but not to the completion of achieving individual liberation for oneself alone, because one will be stuck in that for a long time, but instead to try to develop the mind of bodhicitta, a mind that's aiming for bodhi, for enlightenment, motivated out of compassion for sentient beings, wanting to be in the best position to lead them out of suffering into that very same state of enlightenment in which we are always, everything we experience is experienced as bliss and void. No suffering feelings that are experienced by a Buddha. In order to achieve that state, we need to accumulate the two collections of merit and wisdom, which we know something about, but relatively little. So we're studying Nagarjuna's Fundamental Wisdom, which is a commentary on Buddha Shakyamuni's Prajnaparamita Sutras. And its commentary, it's one of its main commentaries by Chandrakirti, the Madhyamaka his karikas, the verses, and his own explanation of the verses, the Bhasham, auto-commentary, which sometimes difficult to understand and needs elaboration. So Lama Tsongkhapa, out of his own compassion, composed the Gompa Rapsal to illuminate, to the intention, illuminate the intention of Chandrakirti in his Madhyamaka. So in studying all of these various facets, especially about emptiness now, although we do venture into the collection of merit again and again in our discussions, we're beginning to develop a clearer mental image of emptiness rather than just a word or a concept like just everything is blank, what it actually means, approaching it from so many different levels. Here recently, from the point of view of refuting the Chittamatra system, which talks about its meaning of emptiness just meaning a lack of duality between subject and object. Doing this, undergoing this tough work, mental exertion, in order to accumulate the two collections to become a Buddha for the sake of mother sentient beings, all sentient beings who are exactly equal to us in wanting to be happy, wanting to be free of suffering. They're exactly equal in being worthy to achieve that state. There's no one who should be crossed off the list because they're not up to snuff. They've been too bad. They've created too many negative actions. If we think back of the possibility of our former lives, we've been incredibly naughty in some lives, maybe even evil. Maybe we experience the ripening effect of that as suffering in the lower realms, even suffering as a human. But that's now past. Maybe there's still some suffering as a human in our lives. So thinking affectionately toward other sentient beings, that the appearance of a politician right now as causing so much chaos and so forth in the world is just temporary. That individual has been our dear friends in numberless lives, has been our mother numberless times when, as a mother, she's been kind to give us our body, enjoyments, education, protection, even giving her own life for us. It's only a matter of time. That is to say, that happened maybe in the past, distant past. But that same continuum now is appearing in some sort of discordant form now. In the spiritual sense, letting go of our preconceptions, holding friend, enemy, and stranger as inherently existent. Thinking, I'm going to participate in the class today, or in your morning meditation, I'm going to participate in, I'm going to take, I'm going to meditate today, I'm going to, wash the dishes today, I'm going to clean the house today, in order to accumulate the two collections of merit and wisdom, in order to become enlightened so that I can effortlessly, spontaneously, and without error lead all mother sentient beings into that same state. That's why I'm going to participate in class today. That's the underlying reason. I'm going to listen, contemplate, and meditate in order to become a Buddha, to benefit all sentient beings. Okay. So, welcome, Minto. Mintovo has just arrived also. Yeah, if you're like me, probably not. My mind is very recalcitrant, very like rock, and it doesn't lean naturally toward mercy and compassion. So I have to cultivate that consciously. But I find slowly over time getting better. So before we begin, anyone have any questions from our previous classes or other Dharma questions you'd like to address? Rachel, how are you doing? Anything? No? Okay. Louise, you're thinking?
It's the bigger picture that I keep When we go into the details, I keep losing the bigger picture. So I'm just throwing that out there, something to focus on.
Yeah. That's important to try to see, where we are. So where we are is on the sixth perfection, the perfection of wisdom. And in presenting that, Chandrakirti broke it down into two things, mainly the sixth perfection. Besides talking about the details of other kinds of details about the sixth perfection, the object of meditation of the sixth perfection, the perfection of wisdom, is emptiness. And from the Prasangika point of view, that means the emptiness of inherent existence. So there are two varieties that you could say, the emptiness of phenomena and the emptiness of persons. We have not yet gotten to the emptiness of persons in the sense of detailed explanation in our text, although we've understood it. So we're we're talking about the meditation on the emptiness of phenomena using Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom, the first stanza, that there's no phenomena at any time, at any place, which is arisen from itself, arisen or generated from something which is different than itself, like a seed and a sprout are different conventionally. There's nothing that is generated from both self and other, and there's no phenomena that is generated causelessly. So that's sort of generally where we are. We're still on the second one. So we already dispatched, through refuting the Samkhya system, the generation from a cause which is the same entity as itself. We're now on still refuting the generation from a cause which is different than oneself. We more or less finished that, but at this point, Chandrakirti has now gone into a bit of an excursion into refuting the Chittamatra system for various reasons. Also, as a as a staircase to understand the higher tenet of Prasangika better. But also because as a Mahayana practitioner, the Chittamatra system might say, well, maybe that's easier to understand. That's better. And so Chandrakirti is clarifying, is refuting that. So we've already refuted in certain sections previously the Chittamatra assertion that there is no external world that's a different entity than the mind, and that the mind was inherently existent. We already did that, but now the Chittamatra has restated, as it's said in the text here, restated that again, even though it's been refuted, and they're just trying to get around their refutations. So now in this section that we're just in sort of near the end of, what is this section called? Refuting that position. Okay, so today we are at the point in the text which is in Thupten Jinpa's text 326, page 326, and in the FPMT 184. And for those like Diana who may be listening to this later, there is it's just after stanza 6.68 AC. That's what we just finished last time. Whatever responses they may present can be viewed as akin to their thesis. Therefore, this contention is brought to an end. That's where we left last time. And we read a little bit of this coming section last time. Okay, so are we all together? You know where to look? Okay, so in Thupten Jinpa's text, it says, In view of these, in brief, whatever responses Chittamatra may present to the Madhyamaka, they can be viewed as akin to their thesis, something yet to be proven. Therefore, this contention, the assertion of consciousness only, this contention means that's what the Chittamatra contends. That's what they state, right? That there is only consciousness, mind only, chitta matra. That contention is brought to an end or rebuffed. Something Jimpa says. His translation says that. And then Lama Tsongkhapa's continues, let me illustrate these rebuttals by way of a few examples. A way of few examples or a few examples? Okay. For instance, Madhyamaka presents the following argument. Okay. Subject. So this is nice. It's set out here as a syllogism. Subject, predicate, reason, example. Jimpa says probandum for the predicate. Usually probandum means the thesis, the subject and the predicate. But anyway, whatever. He may have some other reason for using it there. Generally in philosophy also, in logic, formal logic, the probandum is the thesis. It's not just the predicate. So this example, this is an example that the Chittamatra is proposing, right? No, this is an argument that the Prasangika presents. Subject: the three factors, which means when you generate consciousness, the object that's being perceived, the sense faculty, and the consciousness itself. The three factors of the waking state, that's the subject we're talking about, are empty of intrinsic existence. That's the Prasangika position. The reason? Because they are observed, because they are perceived. Okay? What is that? Mikpa yimpechir. Mikpa. So Jimpa here says, because they are perceived. Mikpa means, usually he translates it as observed. And then the example, for example, a dream. Okay, so that's from the Prasangika point of view, that's a legitimate syllogism. And in response to that, the Chittamatra presents the following three syllogisms. They have many other ones, but here, first one, cognition of waking state. So that means when you're not asleep, right? The cognition of the waking state is devoid of external reality, right? Because it is a cognition. This is their contention, that if something is a cognition, is a consciousness, that it will be devoid of external reality, that is a different entity than it. It still is an object. It appears to be an external object, but it is not. It is empty of that external reality, because that's the nature of cognition. Like, for example, dream consciousness. Okay, we're going to refute this. Prasangika is going to refute this. This is their pipe dream. Do you know that expression, pipe dream? No? Maybe. I think it came about from the days of what would you say, Paul? Opium?
Right, opium, I think, yes.
Smoking opium, a pipe dream is you're smoking the opium in a pipe, and then you have all sorts of fantasies. So an expression in English. Okay, second Chittamatra presentation. The objects perceived during the waking state are false they're falsities. So prasangika means something by falsity. We know a falsity from prasangika point of view is that something, its mode of appearance doesn't accord with its mode of existence. So here the Chittamatra have a slightly different take. They say the objects perceived during the waking state are false because they are objects, like, for example, dream objects. So for Chittamatra, the objects of dream are false, right? Because they appear to be real, but they're not. And for Chittamatra, the objects of the waking state are false because they appear to be external, but they're actually not. That's their underlying reason for that. Okay, so the second one. And then third, likewise, if there exists no dependent nature, which is the basis for the afflicted and the enlightened classes of phenomena, or the purified classes of phenomena. So what are they saying there? Why are they saying if there's no dependent nature? The Prasangika says that phenomena are not inherently existent. So for Chittamatra, that would mean they didn't exist at all. So that's what they're thinking here. If according to you, Prasangika, there's no dependent nature that's inherently existent, no dependent nature, which is the basis for the afflicted and purified classes of phenomena, which include all phenomena, the 108 categories of phenomena, then phenomena of both the afflicted and enlightened classes or purified classes will have no existence. This is because they will have no basis, like a cloak or cloth made of turtle hair. Oh yeah. Right? So let's go back over this. So the first one is the Prasangika presentation, right? You get up here. So the FPMT translation of that, you have the Jimpa's text there too also, but the FPMT translation says, when the Madhyamikas set out this following statement, then the Chittamatra is going to respond with these others. So this is at the time of waking, the three objects, sense faculties, and consciousnesses that's the subject, are empty of inherent existence, predicate, because they are observed, as she used the translation rather than they're cognized or something, because they are observed, for example, like a dream. So in regard to this, in July 21st, 2003, 2003, in the morning, Geshe Zopa said, just to get another take on this, you probably say, oh, I understand that, okay. So Geshe said, the reason is because the object is seen by eye consciousness, is observed by eye consciousness, right? They're empty. At the time of the waking state, the object, sense powers, and consciousness are empty of inherent existence. The reason is because the object is seen by eye consciousness or observed by eye consciousness. That's the last line there, because they are observed, for example, like a dream. Anything seen by consciousness means whether they are correct or incorrect. You might see a blue snow mountain or something that would be incorrect, but whether it's correct or incorrect, everything depends on being relative. Everything that we observe depends on its relationship to something else. There is no inherent absolute way of seeing. So being empty of absolute seeing, that is the Madhyamika way of saying. this object, organ, consciousness, these three, the subject, are empty of inherent existence. That's the predicate. The reason is because of being observed. Anything, whatever you see, whatever you know, any object of knowledge should be that way because it is an object of knowledge. That's all, he said. That's all. The Madhyamika says that. The Yogacara will say the following three logics in an opposite way. Okay, so that was Geshe-la's sort of a little commentary on that. So now in response, the Chittamatra presents the following. We just read that. And in regard to that, yeah, Geshe Zopa also said at that same time. So the first of these was what? Cognition of the waking state is devoid of external reality. So remember, Prasangika would say, you could say the cognition of the waking state is empty of inherent existence. But for Chittamatra, their example of emptiness means devoid of external reality. Cognition of the waking state is devoid of external reality because it is a cognition, like, for example, a dream cognition, a dream consciousness. So Geshe Zopa at this point said the following: alaya, or emptiness of duality itself, is that the ultimate? Is that true? He said, well, that's the Chittamatra presumption, right? That emptiness itself of duality, emptiness of duality is the ultimate truth. Isn't that also, then Geshe-la said, isn't that also an object? What's he saying there? Paul, did you catch that?
I think so. Well, I mean, I know what Chittamatra is saying, but I'm not entirely clear on what Geshe Sopa was saying.
So this Chittamatra syllogism is saying cognition of the waking state is devoid of external reality because it is a cognition, like for example, a dream consciousness, or let's say the objects perceived during the objects. The second one, objects perceived during the waking state are false because they are objects. For example, like dream objects. So Geshe-la is now taking, he's talking in regard to that one, objects. So emptiness itself, the emptiness of duality for Chittamatra, is that not an object? Paul? For Chittamatra.
For Chittamatra, the absence of duality of subject and object is emptiness. But
is that emptiness an object? Well, you would press them. An object, a yule, is something which is existent.
Right.
Because it's a synonym of existent, right?
Right.
So that's what he's saying. So isn't that also an object? Isn't that emptiness of duality also an object? So then, therefore, it is false because of being an object. They just said if something is an object of cognition, it is false. According to the Yogacara system, even according to Yogacara system, every object, all objects, yul means objects of knowledge, sheja, they're all the same thing. Any kind of object, the subject, any kind of, so writing the syllogism, subject, any kind of object, we said, what did it say? The objects of the second syllogism, the objects perceived during the waking state, right? Let me go back here. That's the subject of the syllogism. Any kind of object. The predicate is false. The reason because of being an object. The subject is the waking time eye consciousness, for instance, looking out there. What the eye consciousness sees is false or faulty, according to Chittamatra, because it appears to be external, right? That's why they say it's false. Because it is an object. Any object should be false. Now you have a lot of arguments there with Yogacara system, because according to them, any object of the waking state is false. So because their emptiness, their lack of duality between subject and object, that's something that can be realized. That's an object. So that would be false. So Geshe was just pointing out here that that is an internal contradiction. The logic is, the Madhyamika says earlier, the subject, in the syllogism, talking about subject, the object that is perceived, the faculty, and the consciousness, all three are empty of inherent existence. That was the Prasangika position. Because of being observed, because of being objects. That's what the Madhyamika says that way. Now, the opposite way, the Chittamatra, first the Chittamatra Yogacara will say, waking consciousness is empty of external objects. Now, it doesn't say empty of inherent existence, but empty of external object. And the reason, because of being consciousness, like the consciousness of a dream. Okay. So are we following? Sean, what do you think?
Well, that brought up a question that it reminded me of. So the other day we were talking about, they had these views that the Alaya Vishyana had these 5 omnipresent factors, and one of those was contact, which implies that there's always an object, does it not?
Yeah, so for something to be a subject, the Prasangika point of view is that it has to have an object. You can't have a subject without having an object. So say again, what's your doubt here?
Well, I'm just trying to understand. I mean, it sounds like they're saying that these objects don't exist, but
Who are saying they don't exist?
well, isn't that what it just said? The objects perceived during the waking state are false.
Right.
Because they're objects.
It doesn't say that they don't exist.
Okay.
It says that they're false, which for them would mean they appear to be external, but they're not. That is to say that they are the same nature as the mind. There's not a separation of the subject and object the way that it appears to us. Like the trees seem to be out there, the consciousness here, that duality. They say there's no duality, that apparent duality is a mistake. They both arise simultaneously, the subject and object, from the same imprint in the mind, right? That's what they mean when they say the object perceived during the waking state are false.
But was my statement correct that if there's an omnipresent mental factor called contact, that implies that there is always an object?
An omnipresent mental factor, you're talking about alaya or consciousness itself. So alaya vijnana is this 8th consciousness, you can say, right? When we talk about consciousness,
well, it had those qualities of like discrimination.
Yeah, 5 omnipresent mental factors. we mentioned earlier that the alaya vijnana, that was one of the qualities of alaya vijnana, but also consciousness itself that's perceiving the world, to say an I consciousness, has those 5 omnipresent mental factors. And if it recognizes, if it knows its object, like I consciousness knows, I know the trees out, it sees the color and shape of the trees and so forth. I hear sounds, I know those. Then it has other mental factors also, in addition to those 5 omnipresent. Those 5 omnipresent were only mentioned in regard to alaya because it does have those, but it doesn't know the objects. Alaya doesn't know the objects. But regular consciousness, the 6th consciousness, does know, well, let's say the 5 sense consciousnesses and the 6th consciousness, mental consciousness, knows its objects. Okay, think about it. Think about it for a while. Let's go on a little bit further here. I'm going to read the next one, 3. Did I read that already? Likewise, if there exists no, yeah, I read that already. If there exists no dependent nature, which is the basis for the afflicted and purified classes, things will not exist because they'll have no basis, like a cloak made of turtle hair, like a piece of cloth that you weave from turtle hair. Okay. And then Geshe Zopa says, likewise, oh no, what did it say? Jimpa says, likewise, we will also explain this by means of the analogy of eyes infected by myodesopsia. Hope I've pronounced it correct. Their rejoinders are of this sort. The rejoinders means these 3 kinds of syllogisms that Chittamatra responds to Prasangika, saying that phenomena are not inherently existent. So he has in there note 591, and he says, this entire section, if you look at the end of Jimpa's book, in the electronic version, you can just click on it and you can go back and forth, whereas in the book you have to turn to the back. This entire section, beginning with the Madhyamaka's own argument, followed by the 3 types of arguments proposed by the Chittamatra as their rejoinders, are reproduced here by Tsongkhapa almost verbatim from Chandrakirti's commentary. Okay, so this is Lama Tsongkhapa doesn't change Chandrakirti's presentation. So, yeah, let me just read a little bit further, and then we're going to put up a PDF of the sort of commentary by Geshe Zopa about this section, because it helps a little bit. How are we doing so far? Are you following more or less what we're talking about? Paul is nodding. Don is pulsating. I'm not sure if that means yes or no. It's sort of he's coming. Doris is okay, thumbs up. Don, are you following more or less?
Yes, but I'm waiting for further explanation.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, Mikhail, what do you think?
Yeah, I just find I'm doubting about the logic of the first Chittamatra syllogism.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you use the subject as the reason of your syllogism? Cognition is devoid of external reality because it is cognition. Isn't that strange? Logically, I mean.
Yeah. So, sepe namshe ni chirogi dongi tongte namshe yimbeche. Yeah, so it uses namshe both places, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, well, we'll get to that in a second. So continuing on in Thupten Jima's translation. As for the first 2 syllogisms, remember there were 3, Chittamatra responded with 3 syllogisms. The first 2, since their exemplifications remain unestablished, their examples are not accepted by the Prasangika. They remain unestablished, Jimpa translates. the reasons they offer remain the same as their theses. Maybe this is getting to what you're saying, but it's using a different thing. FPMT, Venerable Joan translated, with regard to the three, is this the right one? With regard to the three syllogisms, in the first two, since the example is not established, or you could say the examples in the first two are not established, the proof and that which is to be proven are similar. The proof and that which is to be proven are similar. Because in a dream there exists form that is a phenomenal sphere, or phenomenal sphere, which is a different entity from the mental consciousness. Whoa, what is that? Yeah, that was said by Thupten Jinpa's translation, but what is that talking about? What is that saying? I didn't read Thupten Jinpa's line. This is because in a dream state, there do exist mental object forms that are of a different nature than the mental consciousness. So these are Prasangika's answer to the first two syllogisms of Chittamatra. They're saying the first two syllogisms are unestablished. As for the first two syllogisms, since their exemplifications remain unestablished, the reasons they offer remain the same as their theses. The reasons they offer remain the same as their theses. This is because in a dream state, there do exist mental object forms that are of a different nature from mental consciousness. Yeah, a lot of words. And to play a little mental jujitsu, let me just read the next sentence that finishes that. With respect to the third argument, so he said the examples were not established for the first two. For the third one, the opponent's intention is to prove the existence of an intrinsically real basis. That's that which Chittamatra would like to say, there's an inherently existent basis for the afflicted and unafflicted classes of phenomena, the afflicted class and the purified class. If the assertion is that no such basis will exist, that is, there's no inherently existent basis. If there's no inherently existent basis, the reason will be unestablished. If, however, the intended basis is something with intrinsic reality, then there will be no entailment. Oh yeah, that's easy to figure out, right? Okay, so if I could ask Doris, Doris has kindly posted this PDF in the chat. If you'd like to download it and you can follow along as I read. So this is going to be talking about this section, is jumping. So again, this was Geshe Sopa on July 21st, 2003 in the mornings. We had 2 sessions a day. Yeah, dude, summer courses were quite, Sean, what do you think? Quite intense? You were at some of the summer courses. Morning and afternoon. Rachel, were you there for some?
Yeah, there was an artist from Mexico that was drawing a cartoon of how he felt each day, and his head kept getting bigger until it like fell over and busted open.
Right. So after the morning session, we'd break, we'd have a quick lunch. Usually it was catered some of the time. That was nice. Then we would have a little time to digest and discuss. I remember discussing during the discussions with Jim Blumenthal, who's passed away since then, and Jim Apple, who's written several books since then, has become a professor. So it was a very dynamic time. So in that morning, Geshe said, now here, the example is not established. So what is he talking about? That was what the the Prasangika says, right? As for the first two syllogisms of Chittamatra, reading Jimpa's translation, since their exemplifications remain unestablished, they're not established, the reasons they offer remain the same as their theses. So Geshe-la's commentary to that, starting there. Now here, the example is not established. Why? The example is not correct. So what is the example in the first two? What are the examples? Yeah, sort of keep these things in mind. The first example was, what was it? That syllogism. Cognition of the waking state is devoid of external reality because it is a cognition like, for example, dream consciousness. And in the second one, dream objects is the example. The first example, in the first syllogism, Chittamatra, the example is dream consciousness. And the second one is dream objects. Okay. So here the example is not established. Why? That example is not correct. The example is not correct for the Prasangika, because in the first syllogism, the Yogacara says, during a dream, consciousness is empty of external objects, right? That's their contention. How we would say there are no, well, would Prasangika accept that? That the dream consciousness is devoid of external objects? Mikhail? No? They wouldn't say
No.
that? Why not?
Because consciousness, consciousness conceives of external objects. That we would agree.
Paul, do you agree with Mikhail?
No.
Okay, that's good.
Perceives.
Because there's from the Prasangika point of view, the objects of the dream are external objects. They are the phenomenal source, mental phenomenal source. Anyway, we continue on here. The example is not correct for the Prasangika because in the first syllogism, the Yogacara says during dream, consciousness is empty of external object. They say there is no physical object. But the Prasangika view is that even during the dream time, if mental consciousness sees colors, shapes, or mental consciousness dreams of sounds, smells, and so forth. So you can dream of tastes, you can dream of tactile sensations and all of these things, whether you're blind or not. They are forms, external forms. They are, so Prasangika says at the time of the dream, they are different entities from the mental consciousness, so that they don't accept that. That example is not established. What example? The first example that the Chittamatra was saying, dream consciousness, and the second example, dream objects. Okay, we have to read a little bit more to kind of see where we're going here. Geshe-la said, because he's quoting, when it's in italics, usually that's our approximation at the time of the text, because the Dharma entrance form exists. So what is that in Sanskrit, Mikhail, Dharma entrance form?
Oh, I don't know the Sanskrit, the Tibetan.
Yeah, what's it? Yeah, either way.
Chögikeche?
Chukikeche.
Yeah.
Chukikeche Kisuk, I guess, right? The Dharma entrance form, or what is that in Sanskrit, Paul? The Dharma Ayatana.
Yeah, Dharmayatana. Yeah.
Rupa, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So what does that mean? Remember when we talked before, for the Prasangika, even the objects of mental consciousness that appear clearly are actually considered to be objects that have an external reality. Do you remember that? Louise, I could see Louise's eyes going to the side, like I'm not sure what they went to her right side, so I'm not sure what that means. Mikhail, do you remember when we were talking about the Chuki Keche Zuk?
Yeah, I think, yeah, we mentioned 5 types of phenomena spheres like that. One of them was the dream objects. Another one was like a meditative stabilization on skeletons.
Exactly.
And all these are considered as external forms.
Right. And that also included the non-revelatory forms, like say, form that you create through taking a vow and so forth. Okay, because the Dharma entrance form exists, any form, any physical thing that appears only to the mental consciousness. So, for instance, the dream objects, the herd of wild elephants or the beautiful man or woman or whatever, that is only appearing to your mental consciousness. It's actually not appearing to your actual eye consciousness. Your eye consciousness, your air consciousness, so forth, are absorbed during the dream. So any physical thing that appears only to the mental consciousness, for instance, color, shape, and so forth, that is the Dharma entrance form. That is a Dharma entrance form. Earlier, we mentioned the Prasangika said the Dharma entrance form is a physical, subtle form which is only an appearance to the mind. The mind being the sixth consciousness, the sixth mental consciousness, rather than to the senses. Any object that is seen directly by eye consciousness, on the other hand, colors, shapes, and so forth. Well, you don't have to say etc. there. I think I put etc. Color and shape. Those are the only things that are seen directly by eye consciousness. That visual form is the form entrance form rather than the Dharma entrance form. Do you see a difference there? Entrance, when we talk about the ayatana or entrances, or Tibetan keche, what are they entrances? Why are they, one etymology of the word entrance is that they are entrances to the generation of consciousness. So there are 12 of them, according to the six objects and the 6 faculties that are necessary there. Those are entryways for the 6 consciousnesses to be produced. That's why they're called, one reason why they're called entrances or ayatana. Any object that is seen directly by eye consciousness, color and shape, for instance, that visual form is the form entrance form, or the Zuki Kecheki Zuk. Visual form has 2 kinds. When we talk about those things that are called visible forms, they're of 2 kinds. I lost my place. Where am I reading here? Sounds. Visual form has 2 kinds: Dharma entrance form and form entrance form. And under when we talk about form entrance form, you could also talk about sound entrance form, odor entrance form, taste entrance form, tactile object entrance form. Sounds, odors, etc., are clearly appearing to the mental consciousness in a dream that appear in a dream that way clearly, are also included in the Dharma entrance. They are forms, but not visual forms. Okay. Sounding complicated, right? What do you think? Nadine needs a break. Anna, are you following?
Thank you, Venerable George. I'm following because you're explaining it, so thank you.
Okay. Okay. Rachel, are you lost or you sort of under?
This part's okay. The three syllogisms, my brain kind of is having a hard time wrapping around everything that the Chittamatra is saying, Chittamatra is saying, and then Prasangika. It's getting
Right. Okay. So we'll try to clarify that. Okay. So the visual form entrance is the direct object of eye consciousness. The Dharma entrance form means, in a similar way, physical things which appear to the mental consciousness, but they are not visual object forms. They are only perceivable by the mental consciousness. In the dream time, horses, etc., herd of wild elephants, colors and shapes in the dream time are Dharma entrance forms. Also the sounds and smells and tastes in the dream, if you have those. Does anyone dream of smells? I think I asked this before, or tastes? It's possible. Do you dream of conversations? Yeah, that sounds, yeah. Later, so dreamtime horses, color shapes in the dreamtime are Dharma entrance forms. Later, when yogis meditate, well, at another time, let's say, if a yogi is going to meditate on repulsiveness in order to subdue attachment, right? That's a reason for meditating like this. One of the reasons. When the yogis meditate on the entire ground being pervaded by skeleton bones, you can either say skeletons or bones or skeleton bones, whatever. That's one of the meditations that a person would do in order to subdue their attachment. So at that time, everything appears as bones, as unattractive, as ugly. I'm not sure what it said, good things. Whatever, sometimes when yogis, they're mental seeing things which are not able to be seen by others' eye consciousnesses, but only their minds see them. Those are subtle forms. So that is what is being talked about here when it's talking about skeletons and so forth. Those are considered to be also Dharma entrance forms, right? The skeletons that they imagine. So therefore, that's my abbreviation, ST. So therefore, here, like a dream so therefore, like a dream, which is the example that was being used by the Chittamatra, that is not a correct example. It is incorrect because even during the dream time, there is a physical thing, Prasangika says, this Dharma entrance form, an external form. External doesn't mean completely outside, right? The herd of wild elephants or the beautiful person is not existing externally in that sense. We say inside and outside. We say, what other ways to say inner, outer, inner, there's inside and outside. But for example, do you say that the intestines and so forth are external or internal? Usually common sense, internal means inside the body, right? That's what we generally would mean. But when Yogacara is talking about consciousness, when they're talking about consciousness being internal, consciousness, its own reflection, then it is internal. It's is nature of consciousness. I'm not sure. I guess that's the nature of consciousness, the subject, as being a subject rather than an object. Something that you see is a different entity from consciousness. From the Chittamatra point of view, is called external, something that's different than the consciousness. Louise, you just want to remind about taking a break? Okay, well, let me just read a little bit further with Geshe here. Okay, so getting a little bit something stated here. So the first two are incorrect. That is the first two examples that Chittamatra proposed. What did it say? Like dream consciousness, like dream objects. They are incorrect. Okay.
Venerable?
Yes.
So that means that the explanation Geshe Sopa just gave is correct for both examples, examples of the two first syllogisms.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. So the first two are incorrect. Now, Jorwa Sumbani, and that's at the Tibetan text if you're following the Tibetan, the third syllogism. Likewise, if the base of the fully afflicted and completely pure, which is dependent nature, if that base does not exist, and that would be from the Chittamatra point of view, that means it didn't exist inherently. They would like to push that it inherently exists, right? So if it doesn't inherently exist, that means for them it doesn't exist at all. If you say that, Prasangika, if there's no inherently existent dependent nature, if there is no base of the fully diluted and the completely pure, that is the dependent nature. If there is no dependent nature, then the fully afflicted and the completely pure are non-existent because of lacking a support. Okay, getting into some little bit of deep grass here. So just let me read a little bit further here. So the Tibetan, most of you are not following the Tibetan, but some of you where it says Kunjang Giten. So Kunjang, what does that mean, Paul? Do you know?
I assume that's short for something like Kun Yunmong and Chang, something right, kind of defiled and pure.
Right. So Kunjang is an abbreviation of Kuni Nyongmong. Kuni Nyongmong means completely afflicted. That's how we're translated, or the fully afflicted. And the Nampar Jangwa means the totally purified size of phenomena. Remember, all phenomena can be included in that. Most of the things that we experience are the kuninyomong, are the fully afflicted side, right? Phenomena. But there are some things that are on the pure side, like the six perfections and emptiness and so forth. Kunjangi Ten, the basis of the fully afflicted and the completely pure. Rangsengi Drupa Chik Drup Dopa Yimbe Delani Tensam Mepa Madrupa Yinla. Okay, the rest is easy in the Tibetan. So if you say because the support does not exist, the base does not exist, President Kiko will distinguish between talking about just a mere base or an inherently existing base. So this is an important point. I should have put that sentence in, or what do you call it? Underlined it or something. President Kiko will distinguish here between talking about a mere base or an inherently existent base. So President Kiko would say there is a mere base for the fully afflicted and the completely purified sides, all phenomena. There is a merely imputed base, conventionally existent base. That's a mere base. Of course, it is not correct to say just a mere base does not exist. President Kiko would not accept that because there is a mere base. There is a mere, Louise. There is a mere Rachel. There is a mere Anna. There is a mere Minto Vo. Right? They do exist conventionally. But if you were talking about inherently existent base, this existing kind of base, some special kind of inherently existent foundation, then not. So then, what is that? Rangsen Rangit seni gi drupa la sampani mingebao. Okay, so this is getting to the difficult words in Jimpa's translation and in Venerable Jones' translation. So Rangit seni gi drupa means established by its own characteristic, right? Or you say it essentially means inherently existent. With regard to that, samna, if one thinks about that, mangepao. Mangepa means what, Mikhail?
Indefinite, and I think it kind of means no perversion.
Okay, so if thinking about inherent existence, it is indefinite. So what Lama Tsongkhapa is saying, your logic has kappa mange. So kappa means pervasion and mange means indefinite. So there's no definite pervasion because a characteristically existent support does not exist. Okay, we're just going to finish reading this and then we're going to stop for a break so you can think about what this means. If thinking about inherent existence, inherently existent support, then mangepa yino, a characteristically existent support, of course, does not exist. And what your reason putting, the reason that you put is not pervasive. Kappa mangepa. Mange means get my eyes screening. Mange means kappa. You know, seni is the subject, such and such subject, and such yin, the predicate, is such and such, that's the predicate, because this, some reason, and there are three answers, those three syllogisms. The first one is yimpe chir. You can say that the sign is not established. This one not follow this reason, doesn't follow the predicate kappa mange. Mangepa means kappa. And then there's some Tibetan that Geshe-la said. You can say kappa majung when you debate, right? What is that? How would you translate that into English, Paul? Kappa majung.
Well, kappa would be the pervasion. Machung does not arise or
Right.
not occur.
You've debated in the debating courtyard sometime, right? So that's kappa majung. There's essentially you can say there's no pervasion. The pervasion has not arisen. There is no pervasion. You can say kappa majung, same thing. If you are studying the collected topics, we would say there is no pervasion. That is the same thing as kappa mange. Geshe-la says. The sign is not, so indefinite pervasion means there is no pervasion. The sign is not established. The pervasion does not occur. And then if here two things, subject to the predicate, ask accordingly, yes if you say accept, no by saying why. That is saying two things. So so if someone says kappa majung to you, if you're debating, and you have two alternatives, you can say what, Paul?
De or chi.
Means what?
De means I accept it. Chi cheer means why.
Chi means why, right? Some of you are still studying debating class. Wasn't there someone who was studying debating class? Paul, does that sound familiar when you say de and chi or do you do everything in English, Don?
Everything is in English.
Oh, okay. So what does de actually mean in Tibetan, Paul?
It means to either to assert or to assent to. So you could either you accept it or you also assert that. You also wish it to be true. It could be to wish, to assert, to accept.
Duba, yeah, duba. Sometimes we say desire or
The
wish.
desire to wish, yeah.
Okay, so even though it sounds like the word desire, like duchak, the same de of duchak, the attachment, clinging desire. Here it means that that's your wish, that's your assertion. Okay, so let's take a break. Okay, we got a chance to stretch our legs and get our tea and evacuate our bladders and so forth.
Can I
Okay.
ask another question?
Yeah, of course.
So you were mentioning that the form realm would still be the form entrance forms versus the Dharma entrance forms, but
So what Sean is meaning that in the break time he was asking about this. What about in the form realm? What was your question? In the form realm?
well, I thought I heard a thing where they were talking about these different stages of calm abiding where you could enter the form realm in a state of calm abiding. And I would think if I was sitting someone that's meditating on the form realm, that I'm not going to experience what they're experiencing. So how would that be a form entrance form versus a Dharma entrance form? If only they're seeing it.
Oh, so when we talk about the form realm, the form realm is distinct from the desire realm and the formless realm, right? So as I think you understand that. So we can be born in the form realm. I thought that's what you were talking about before. If you're born in the form realm, I think you have, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, or Mikhail, I think in the form realm you do have eyes, form realm eyes and ears.
Yeah, you have all 5 sense faculties in there. Yeah.
Okay, so if you're asking whether the things that you see in the form realm, so in the form realm, you're not seeing the desire realm things unless you use your clairvoyance to see the desire realm. Those form realm beings, they have their own, it's sort of like a cloistered, or what do they call it? The housing estates where there's guards at the gate. What do they call those?
Gated communities.
Gated, that's the word, a gated community, right? But you can, with your clairvoyance, you can go outside the gates and look at the desire realm. But generally, the things that they see in the form realm would be just form entrance forms, let's say, right? They wouldn't be, they don't need to use their mental consciousness for that. Okay, so I'm going to leave that PDF of Geshe Zopa's comments for the time being so that we can continue on. On Monday, if you have more questions about that, we can continue. So when you said you won't be able to be here tomorrow on or something, you meant Monday for discussion group. Tomorrow's Sunday. Okay, so let's continue. Now finishing that section to that extent. We'll go back on the basis of our discussion on Monday. We may go back next Saturday, to just clarify that if there are any other questions. But now the next section, how refuting the Chittamatra standpoint does not contradict the scriptures. Okay, what's the underlying assumption here? Rachel, what do you think?
That we're talking from the Prasangika Madhyamaka view?
Well, that statement, how refuting the Chittamatra standpoint does not contradict the scriptures. So what scriptures, if you contradict the Chittamatra, what scriptures might you be contradicting?
Sutra Unraveling the Thought.
Oh,
I'm
maybe.
sorry. I'm getting all mixed up. No, I don't know.
The Lankavatara Sutra and other Chittamatra sutras where they said they seem to say there's no external reality and so forth. So the assumption here is that if you refute the Chittamatra point of view, wouldn't that contradict the scriptures that are the basis for the Chittamatra view, like the Lankavatara and so forth? Okay. So Jimpa inserts here the last line of verse 668. The Buddhas never taught that real entities exist. Okay. Garyang ngopo yoche matento. Okay. So the Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary begins, not only is refuting the Chittamatra standpoint unharmed by reason, so if we refute Chittamatra, you can't use any reason to harm our refutation, right? The Prasangika refutation is unharmed by reason. You might say it's harmed by scripture. Remember, there's two ways to establish things, by scripture and by reason. Scripture means when you've ascertained that the scripture is purified of various things, is sort of like the actual word of the Buddha who you've ascertained is a valid person, then you can accept those scriptures. So the Prasangika refutation of Chittamatra is unharmed by reasoning, and it's unharmed by scripture also. It is not possible for this refutation to be invalidated by scriptures either. Right? There are two ways that you could invalidate something. It's contrary to scripture or it's contrary to reason. Right? Like say, for instance, so the hallmark of the Buddhist scriptures are what are they called? The four, what? What are they called? The four something. So compounded phenomena are impermanent. All phenomena are suffering.
The four marks, right?
Four marks, right?
Right.
All compounded phenomena are impermanent. All phenomena are suffering and something. Third,
Tamche midak, no, so zakche duche tamche midakbare, zakche tamche dungyaware, chu tamche dong shing dak me. All phenomena are selfless and empty, and nyanyanle depa shiwao, only nirvana is peace.
Nirvana is bliss or peace, right? So those are the four marks of a Buddhist scripture, that if it contradicts those, it's not considered a Buddhist scripture. So by something which is a Buddhist scripture, it is not possible to invalidate this Prasangika refutation by these qualified scriptures. So that's Chittamatra would like to say, no, come on, there's these valid scriptures like Lankavatara and others that say there's no external reality. So that refutes you, Prasangika. So the Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary says, this is because insofar as their own standpoint is concerned, the fully awakened Buddhas, whose standpoint? Their own standpoint. Whose standpoint is that? Not only is refuting the Chittamatra standpoint unharmed by reason, it is not possible for this refutation to be invalidated by the scriptures either. This is talking about Prasangika, right? This is because insofar as their own standpoint is concerned, Prasangika point of view, the fully awakened Buddhas never taught in any of the scriptures that real entities exist, that inherently existing entities exist. In fact, in the Descent into Lanka Sutra, the Lankavatara Sutra, so this is a little bit frustrating because the Lankavatara is not yet translated by the 84,000 translation thing. It says it's still in progress. It's an important sutra, especially in Japan, probably Minto in Vietnam also, the Lankavatara. There are some translations, but it's very hard to find a translation of the Tibetan. So here, this statement from the Lankavatara says, the three worlds are mere imputations. This is actual quotation from the Lankavatara. No entities exist by virtue of their essence. What are in fact imputed things, what happen to be, which are actually imputed things, these logicians conceive to be real. So that seems to accord correctly with the Prasangika point of view. Then another stanza, there is no matter, or rupa, it actually says, there's no consciousness, there's no foundation consciousness, no entity. It's the logicians, it is the logicians, the uncouth childish, the zombie-like who construct such things. What's uncouth here? Tokugawa Daku.
Chiba Nyamba, just Nyamba. Bad children, Chiba Nyamba.
Is that right?
Yeah, uncouth, childish.
Chiba Nyamba. Oh yeah, I see. Yeah, right. Yeah, the Nyamba usually means, bad, but you can take it as like uncouth here. Yeah. So, Mikhail, what are you thinking?
No, I'm just wondering, usually when we say logicians in treatises, we're referring to Dignaga and Dharmakirti. But this is a sutra quote. So to whom the Buddha is referring to here as logicians?
So here, Togewa is not the usual word that we would say for logician, meaning Dharmakirti and Dignaga. We wouldn't refer to them as Togewa. Togewa is kind of a pejorative sense, means people who are like nerds. What other could you say? Like they just rely on logic and they're not relying on practical, they're just adhering to their own logic and not open to debate and so forth. It's sort of like hard-minded and so forth. That's the Togewa here. So it doesn't mean logician in the sense of criticizing Dignaga and Dharmakirti and all of the great logicians in positive sense. This particular term Togewa comes up again and again in the scriptures, meaning the people that are hard-minded like that. Okay, let's see. So just for your information, yeah, I thought I had down here these verses. So I was able from the Tibetan, yeah, ACPI, Rangshin Meiching. Oh, I thought I had down here which verses they were. They're not successive verses. Maybe it's coming later in my notes here. We have these two verses that are quoted from the Lankavatara Sutra, the descent into Lanka. They're not successive verses. They're separated by some verses in between. Okay, so let's see what Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary is about this. The first line, okay, that's the three worlds are mere imputations, right? Or what do we say? Here it says, Sipa Sumni Takpa Sam. What's the usual, in the Lankavatara and other places, it says Kamsum Chittamap Sensampao. Kamsum means what, Paul?
The three worlds or the three realms.
Right. It's Sipasum here.
Three mundane worlds. Yeah, something like that.
So Jimpa's translating almost the same way. May not mean exactly the same thing. So that's what's being referred. The three worlds are mirror imitations. The first line, the three worlds are mirror imitations, that the three worlds exist as mirror imitations of the mind, with the second line explaining what that means. No entities exist by virtue of their essence or by their own nature. Since the explanation is offered in terms of the absence of entities existing by virtue of their own essences, the scripture is not stating that nothing exists at all. It's not saying that there are no phenomena, that nothing exists at all. Rather, it is the entities established through their essence, or the entities that are inherently existent, that have no existence. When it says in the three worlds are mirror imputations, no entities that inherently exist are existing by virtue of their essence. Or that's just by way of their essence means inherently. Rather, it is the entities established through their essence, through their inherent existence, that have no existence. And it is the logicians, it's hard-headed, nerdy logicians, who have failed to find suchness, who assert they are mere imputations of the mind, who assert what are mere imputations of the mind have existence by virtue of their essence. This is explained in the last two lines. What were the last two lines? We're just reading above there. What are in fact imputed things these logicians conceive to be real. This is explained in the last two lines that contain the word construct.
Yeah, I think it's the two lines of the last
of
verse.
the last one. Right. Of the last one. Right. Sorry. It is the logicians, the uncouth, childish, zombie-like, who construct things. Okay. This is explained by the last two lines. I guess if you have two stanzas, you say the first two lines, it means that the first two lines of the first stanza, the last two lines means the last two lines of the last stanza. This is explained in the two lines that contain the word construct. In this way, the absence of entities existing by virtue of their essences is presented in general. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Prasangika is defending itself against accusations that it would be contradictory to scripture to accept the Prasangika point of view. Right? Oops, what did I do here? There we go. Okay. They're taking quotes from the Lankavatara, which Chittamatra usually relies on, because in other places in it makes statements that seem to assert, if you read it in their way of reading it, assert that mind only exists, that there is no external reality that's a different entity from the mind, and that the mind is inherently existent. Seems to imply that. But here, the Prasangikas are pointing out these important other stanzas there that say that things are just imputed, that they have no existence by means of their own essence or by means of their own inherent nature. To present this point in specific terms, the Sanskrit term rupa refers to both matter as well as intrinsic nature. And here it should be understood to mean matter. This is because it is meant to contrast with the words paired with it, with the word paired with it, consciousness. So where does rupa come in there? So that of the second stanza that we just read, the first line reads, there is no matter, or rupa, no consciousness that's paired with rupa. This is because it is meant to contrast with the word paired with it, consciousness. The word entity in the phrase no entity refers to essence, no essence. So there is no foundation consciousness, no alaya vijnana. That's the second line of that stanza. No entity. So he says no entity refers to essence, not to things. So that means, yeah. For the absence of things such as cognitions, the absence of things such as cognitions and material objects was already stated. It refers to, quote, the essence, unquote, that is rejected in contexts such as the negation of the true existence of things and other similar negations. These togewa, the pejorative term for logicians, are zombie-like in that they lack a mind capable of probing suchness. They're feeble-minded. In brief, this scriptural citation refutes the view that dependent phenomena of the three realms possess intrinsic existence. So this supports the Prasangika point of view, and so that when Prasangika says that the phenomena are not inherently existent, that doesn't refute. You can't say that refutes the scriptures that support the Chittamatra, because this scripture, that's part of it, seems to support the Chittamatra, but there are explicit statements that saying that phenomena are mere imputations and so forth. How are we doing? We following? Nadine, what do you think?
Thank you so much. Sometimes I understand a little bit, but mostly I'm lost.
Oh, you go back the next day or later and you think about it, you're still lost, or
sometimes I recognize something which you said, and I understand something, and that gives me a little bit more hope or confidence. But I'm almost getting desperate now.
Oh, how can we help? See if we can clarify something. What kind of contradiction or unclarity are you finding?
I'm just I have difficulty to follow at all. Sometimes I think I don't understand anything, really.
That's good. That's
Thank you.
good. That's like Newton. Remember, I've told this story so many times. When he first read this big tome on mathematics, he said he didn't understand anything. And then he read it a second time and he understood a little bit. Then he read it a third. I think he read it. I don't know how many times he claimed to have read it. Does anyone remember? Do you remember, Mikhail, how many times he said, and then finally he mastered it. So I remember talking with Alan Wallace. Do you know who Alan Wallace is, Nadine? A Buddhist scholar, practitioner. He had been a monk. And when I knew him earlier as a monk, when he was with Geshe Repton in Dharamsala, I remember asking him, about the selflessness of persons according to the different schools, and it all seemed so complicated to me. I was all mixed up, and he said, "Don't worry, you'll understand. You'll understand it over time." So yeah, don't worry. Leaving imprints now, and but don't give up completely. Try to go back, and when we've read a little bit more, go back over what we've said before and see if things get a little more clear. Okay. Okay, let me continue. So the last sentence was, in brief, the scriptural citation, these two verses, which are not adjacent in the Tibetan translation, but there are a couple of verses in between them, refutes the view that dependent phenomena of the three realms possess intrinsic existence. It refutes inherent existence of the dependent phenomena of the three realms. That's the Prasangika point of view. So the opponent, meaning the Chittamatra, might respond, these scriptural citations present how one thing, the dependent, is essentially empty of the other, the imputed. Okay, so what are we talking about? Mikhail, are you still there, or are you off?
Yeah.
So when we talk about the three natures, what were the three natures from?
Other powered natures or dependent natures, imputed natures, and thoroughly established natures.
Right. So here it's saying, so when we talk about these three kinds of natures, these scriptural citations, the Chittamatra will say, these scriptural citations present how one person, how one thing, the dependent, that's the what? What is that in Tibetan?
Dependent nature, other powered natures.
Yeah, Shenwang, right? The other powered phenomena, here is called dependent, is essentially empty of the other, the imputed. So when of these three natures, we have other powered phenomena, imputed phenomena, and thoroughly established phenomena. So it's saying that the dependent phenomena, other powered phenomena, are empty of being imputed, being the imputed phenomena, namely the substantive duality of subject and object. So that's what their meaning of empty is, that the dependent is empty of the imputation being the substantive duality of subject and object. What does he mean by substantive here? Tade niki, ngo niki tongpa tempane. Okay, not quite sure what he means by the substantive duality of subject and object. So these citations do not undermine our Chittamatra standpoint. So they're saying, when you're talking about emptiness, they're relying on their own meaning of emptiness, that phenomena are empty of being external objects. Let's continue. So the Chittamatra is going to the Prasangika is going to reply to that. They say, hold on, things are not as bad as not the way you say. Such an emptiness that you're proposing here, that the dependent is empty of the imputed, from your point of view, the imputed meaning a duality. Such an emptiness is not suited to be the perfect emptiness. Now, the real perfect emptiness, actually, could you say that the perfect emptiness for Prasangika would be the relative is empty of the imputed, Mikhail?
But what would be the imputed? If the imputed is inherent existence, then yeah.
Yeah. So you could say that same phrase and say the Prasangika would say that's talking about the perfect emptiness, that the relative phenomena are empty of this thing that the mind imputes some inherent existence there. Okay. So such an emptiness is not suited to be the perfect emptiness. This emptiness proposed by the Chittamatra. In the Lankavatara Sutra, descent into Lanka or entry into Lanka, I'm not sure descent, does Jukpa also mean to descend, Paul?
I don't think so. I think they're just being poetic, right?
But
It's like it's avatara, right?
Yeah.
Same as in Madhyamaka avatara. So enter into, yeah.
But perhaps the original Sanskrit, what do we call it? Lanka? No, this is Lankavatara. Yeah, it's the entryway. But maybe there's some.
I think it's just because it's south of India, descent.
Yeah.
Didn't the Buddha fly there? Wasn't that what they say?
Yeah. I think there is some explanation like that, why they use descent, because I think in the Chinese translations, when we come into English, it's usually descent. Anyway, in the Lankavatara Sutra, for example, so this is a sutra that is the basis for Chittamatra generally, one of them. It says, O Mahamati. So who is Mahamati? Rachel, do you know who Mahamati was? Louise, do you know? Anyone? Mikhail knows.
The great Mati. No, for me it just means a great being.
No,
But I don't know.
There's an actual bodhisattva who's is the conversation, is asking the Buddha questions. Doesn't appear in if you check in the various sources, he doesn't appear maybe in any other scripture. Maybe there's some place, but that's a proper name. It's talking about this person. So the Buddha is talking back to, is telling him, O Mahamati, the emptiness of one being absent in another is the most inferior among all forms of emptiness. So I think I mentioned this before a couple of times at various points in our class. Sometime when we talk about Rangtong and Shentong, remember those terms? Self-empty and other empty, or emptiness of other. Some of the philosophical schools talk about Shentong being superior to Rangtong. Rangtong means that a phenomena is empty of its own inherent existence, not something else. Shentong means the phenomena is empty of something else other than itself. Like, say, for instance, a gompa, a meditation hall or whatever, is empty of monks. Monks are not the entity of the, just say, or to say, my mug is empty of coffee. That's the most inferior among all forms of emptiness. That's easy to understand. The gompa is empty of monks. The mug is empty of coffee, various things like that. So what's being said here, that's when the Chittamatra are saying that, how did they just say here? The dependent is essentially empty of the other, the imputed. And the imputed meaning the duality of subject and object. So that's what's talked about from the in the Lankavatara Sutra. Also, that kind of emptiness is said to be the emptiness of one thing in another. So the emptiness of one thing in another, the other would mean the dependent phenomena, and the emptiness of this imputed phenomena, which is a lack of duality, that's something different. That's a different entity than the basis, right? The dependent phenomena. So the Rangdel, the auto commentary by Lama Tsongkhapa, by Chandrakirti, explains, because this is quoted in Chandrakirti's Madhyamaka in the Bhasham. So the commentary explains that verse. It says, the assertion that because an ox is empty of being a horse, to assert that because an ox is empty of horse, it has no existence as such, is illogical. You say, oh, the horse, the ox does not exist because it's empty of a horse, empty of being a horse. Or you could say the meeting hall, the gompa or whatever, is empty. It does not exist because it's empty of monks. Does that make sense? My mug does not exist because it's empty of coffee. Okay. The assertion that because an ox is empty of being a horse is something different than the ox, right? The assertion that it has no existence as such is illogical. For this ox still exists by virtue of its own essence for you. We would respond to you in terms such as this. Okay, making sense? A little bit? Okay, I saw Louise nodding a little bit. Yeah, a little bit? Okay, good. Rachel, making sense? Doris, what do you think?
I'm following, but don't ask me any questions.
Okay, that was your one question. Okay, what you thought? Okay, I know not to ask Ron. Ron's going to say no. Okay, so, right after that, Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary says in Jimma's translation, in place of the phrase exists by virtue of its own essence, Nakso translates the following. So Nakso, remember, is Nakso Lotsoa, the famous alternative translator of the Madhyamakavatara, Karikas, and the Basham that Lama Tsongkhapa generally finds some faults with his explanation about emptiness, but applauds his translation from the Sanskrit into Tibetan rather than Patsap's translation, I think. Isn't that the general one of the Madhyamakavatara that we use by Patsap Lotsoa? So Natso translates that line, exists by virtue of its own essence. Where is that? What line was that? The second line of the first stanza from the Descent into Lanka. The three worlds are mere imputations. No entities exist by virtue of their essence. So talking about that, not so translates has its own essence, which reads better. Exists by virtue of its own essence. It has its own essence, which reads better. Okay. Let's read a little bit further, and this is where we'll begin next time. Here is how this emptiness of one being absent in another is captured by the above analogy. So the absence of one thing, the emptiness of one being absent of the other, that's what's called shentong, right? From the Prasangika point of view, shentong is not superior to the rangtong, the Prasangika view. In fact, is inferior. But some Kargyu lamas, even they have a category, Vaibhashika, Sautrantika, Chittamatra, yoga, what is it, Yogacara, or to say Svatantrika Madhyamaka, Prasangika Madhyamaka, Shentong as being higher. So that's Lama Tsongkhapa would his brain would explode, and if he heard that came later. Here's how the emptiness of one being absent in another is captured by the above analogy. The Buddha taught emptiness in terms of the absence of intrinsic existence to help extinguish sentient beings' beginningless clinging, to help extinguish the beginningless clinging that we've had since beginningless time of sentient beings, are clinging to entities such as form as possessing true existence. The Buddha taught emptiness in terms of the absence of intrinsic existence, true existence, to help extinguish that clinging to forms as having true existence in sentient beings. And for this, it is necessary to demonstrate how dependent phenomena, perceived in terms of form and so on, do not have true existence. So in order to extinguish our clinging, that we've had since beginningless time to phenomena as being inherent in existence. In order to do that, it's necessary to demonstrate how dependent phenomena, perceived in terms of form and so on, do not have true existence. That's why we're proving that phenomena do not have true existence, do not have inherent existence. So by realizing that, you'll be able to extinguish that clinging, right? That means to abandon the clinging, first by suppressing it, and finally, when you realize emptiness, that will abandon that. Okay, so when, instead of showing this, Chittamatra asserts that the dependent does not exist in terms of subject-object duality, that's their interpretation of emptiness, that the dependent does not exist in terms of subject-object duality. There's no duality. They are the same entity. This is like giving the ox's non-existence as a horse as proof of its non-existence. Okay, so this is a shenwang, or most inferior of emptinesses. Okay, therefore, there is no difference at all between Madhyamaka and Chittamatra when it comes to identifying what is the basis for clinging by sentient beings. Is that right? There's no difference between Madhyamaka and Chittamatra in terms of what the basis of clinging? Well, here, the basis of clinging means the dependent phenomena, but they have different interpretations of what dependent phenomena means. Therefore, there is no difference at all between Madhyamaka and Chittamatra when it comes to identifying what is the basis for clinging with sentient beings. It is those very phenomena that are perceived as external or internal. So that covers, all the phenomena, internal and external, internal. The same is true of the purpose of demonstrating that these phenomena are empty, to help extinguish the clinging to those bases. So that in that way, Chittamatra is similar. Their strategy, their stratagem is to try to prove that phenomena are empty of something that they, from the Chittamatra point of view, they understand that clinging to that false idea of an external world is the reason that we continue to circle in cyclic existence. Prasangika says, that's not the problem. Where they diverge, where they differ, is on what constitutes such clinging. For Chittamatra, clinging consists of grasping at a subject-object duality, right? If that's what we ordinary dumb sentient beings from Chittamatra point of view, we cling to that there is an external reality. That's the problem, right? For Chittamatra, clinging consists of grasping at subject-object duality, the perception of that the dichotomy of outer versus inner represents a real separation. Chittamatra says there's no real separation. That's just that's a perception of that dichotomy. The antidote, says Chittamatra, is to take the perceived dependent phenomenon itself as the basis and to negate its existence in terms of a substantial subject-object duality. In that case, the basis of negation, say a blue object, is negated as being substantially distinct from its perception, the object, which is the object of negation, in the sense of one being the other. Oh, is your mind frozen? Yeah. Don, what do you think?
It's frozen.
Just mere words right now, right?
Many words, yes.
Many or mere, yeah, mere words. So, let's just finish that, and then we will leave that to marinate for a week. For Madhyamaka, in contrast, On the other hand, Madhyamaka, clinging this problem that we have. So this is talking about the basic grasping that is our problem, right? From Prasangika means grasping a true existence. That's our problem. That we assent to the appearance, we grasp at that as being real. For Madhyamaka, in contrast, clinging consists of grasping at the apparent world as having true existence, rather than as something posited by conventional cognition. So Prasangika would say, phenomena do exist as posited by conventional cognition, but they are empty of true existence. So for its antidote, the apparent world itself is taken as the basis and is revealed to not possess true existence. This also is a case where the basis of negation is negated as the object of negation. Those are two different words, basis of negation and the object of negation. So give an example. Who can give an example of those two? Basis of negation and the object of negation. Well, we were talking about relative phenomena, other powered phenomena as being the basis in one sense. And what it's empty of is, the subject-object duality, the Chittamatra point of view. So, where was it here? This too is a case where the basis of negation, let's say the conventional phenomena, is negated as the object of negation in the sense of one being the other. What's the object of negation? If the basis of negation is Shenwang, is other powered phenomena, relative phenomena, Mikhail, what's the object of negation?
In Chittamatra view or in
Chittamatra point of view?
Yeah, it's the object of negation is that the Shenwang is of same entity as the mind.
Yeah, okay, I'm not sure
Something
exactly.
like that.
Well, you would say that the object of negation is duality.
Yeah.
You could say that that's what's being negated on the relative phenomena, that the relative phenomena are empty of being separate objects from an external world. So for its antidote, the apparent world is taken as the basis and is revealed to not possess true existence. This too is the case where the basis of negation is negated as the object of negation in the sense of one being the other. For when sentient beings cling, they do so by grasping at the thing itself in terms of what is to be negated, not in terms of the negation of the presence of some extraneous fact over and above the thing. With emptiness too, what needs to be demonstrated is this, that things are empty of that very mode of existence as conceived by sentient beings. Okay, so actually not difficult, but when you're reading it the first time, like Nadine was saying, that I'm completely lost, I don't understand anything. But it's not that bad. So we're going to continue there next time. We'll review this on Monday. We'll go over Geshe Zopa's statements also. Before we dedicate our virtues, does anyone have something they'd like to ask or share? Yeah, Nadine, what do you think?
This most inferior kind of emptiness, it is still emptiness, right? And it can also help to illustrate or understand the more profound emptinesses, right? Is this correct?
Maybe. So we've mentioned earlier when we were talking about some of the Theravada scriptures that Chandrakirti quoted. That form is like what? Was it? Form is like a bubble, or feelings are like foam, and so forth and so on. Remember, from the Prasangika point of view, they were actually talking about emptiness of true existence. So Bhikkhu Bodhi, in one of his translations of those, I quoted at the time, Bhikkhu Bodhi said, "Oh, these are just saying that they're saying something just kind of like what Nadine is saying is not only a stepping stone, is correct, that phenomena are empty of that duality." Well, let's say Bhikkhu Bodhi was saying that the Tibetan or Prasangika presentation that phenomena are empty of inherent existence isn't what's meant by emptiness. So the word emptiness is found very rarely in the Theravada Sutras, Theravada Suttas, if you use the Pali. In fact, I think there's one sutra called the Emptiness Sutra, which is talking about things like the Gompa is empty of monks. But here in the Mahayana Sutras, emptiness is mentioned very often, as opposed to one or two times in all of the Theravada scriptures, the word emptiness comes up, meaning something more trivial. In the Mahayana Sutras, comes all the time, but it has these two different meanings from the Chittamatra point of view and from the Madhyamaka point of view. Okay, so before we end, any other questions? Okay. Don, Sean, Louise? Anna's not going to have any questions. She's listening. Rachel, anything? Okay, that's good. Mikhail, you popped on, so you have something you want to share?
No, I think I'm okay for now.
Okay.
I did want to hear who won the debate between you and Mikhail's teacher.
Oh, yeah, okay. So there was we never had any actual debate, but Geshe Sherab. So can you give, Mikhail, quickly, can you give a summary of what Geshe Sherab said in terms of the dream? He wanted to say that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Geshe Gelek.
Geshe Gelek, sorry.
Yeah, and because we discussed on Monday class, I think, yeah,
Right.
about whether blind people can see forms in dreams. And you were saying that no.
Visual forms, because they do have, you said see, yeah, that's good enough. Visual forms.
And so, but from my notes in class, I understood that Geshe Gelek was saying that they do. So I asked the question in class, and he answered yes, bluntly yes, and yeah, that whether it's a person born blind or not, if it's not born blind, they will have imprints from their own lives, actual lives. And if they are born blind, then they will have imprints from past lives.
Right, but that's the only exception. So as we said before, imprints from former lives manifesting in the dreams of people that are born blind from birth are vanishingly rare. The research by Western science shows that there's no kind of, I'm not sure how a person who is blind from birth would even react to, or how they'd be able to explain the appearance.
Yeah, that's my point. I think that those people would have tremendously difficulty in explaining and expressing what happens in dreams. I'm not sure it would be so easy to say, oh yeah, I see things. Oh no, I don't see things, because they don't know what it means to see things.
Right. So anyway, the question it seemed Geshe Zopa's interpretation and Thupten Jinpa's translation seemed to, with their parenthetical remarks, seemed to go along with my intuitive view that for a person who is blind from birth, in general, there are no visual objects in the dream. If there were to be visual objects in the dream, they would be due to the ripening of imprints from previous lives. And as Mikhail is saying, for those individuals who are blind from birth, they might not know how to even express that, or what am I experiencing? It's sort of like something they never experience in the waking state. Okay, good. Thanks for sharing that. So let us dedicate our virtues and the virtues of those who have had to leave early for them also. Yeah. Yeah. So I remember telling someone recently, last night was Dakini Sok, right? The 25th of the Tibetan calendar. And so a person was saying they didn't have, they weren't able to set up the offerings. So I photographed the offerings on my table, very minuscule offerings of mana and madana and sok and so forth, and sent them, saying that Tsong Rinpoche used to say that if some of his disciples who didn't have a chance to put water bowls out, or or the various offerings to do their sadhanas, that they could visualize the offerings which were physically made at his altar. So here we can do the same things. We could try to dedicate the virtues of those people who had to leave early, in addition to our own virtues. Due to these virtues, may I quickly become a Guru Buddha, and as a result lead all beings without exception into that same state. May the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more as a result of these virtues. And for the quick return of Lama Zopa's smiling face, hopefully smiling. I hope he doesn't have a sour countenance when we first encounter him. Peerless teacher, meaning the Buddha, assembly of children of the victorious ones, the Bodhisattvas, Shravakas, Pratika Buddhas, and so forth. Losang Drakpa, the conqueror, the Gelugpa refers to him as the second conqueror, the second victorious one. Victorious Losang, the spiritual father and your sons, together with your lineage, all the objects of refuge of the infinite realms, please bestow now, here and now, the virtue and goodness to accomplish this prayer. In upholding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you, Lama Zopa, wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, I make this request. Sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while striving exclusively for the welfare of the victorious one's teachings and for the welfare of mother living beings. While striving in that way so vigorously, you, Lama Zopa, suddenly departed to peace, at which point I lost hope. I was bereft of figuring things out. My refuge protector was gone. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truths of the oceanic blessings of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the bodhisattvas, by the truths, the power of truth of those, may the smile of a new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for us fortunate disciples. Finally, for all of our gurus, present, past, even future, our primordial gurus that have been guided us since beginning of times, you who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures, supreme gateways for the fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging with skillful means, which is the method side, how we help sentient beings. Crank call, sorry. Engaging with skillful means, moved by mercy, moved by love, illuminating spiritual friends, you who illuminate the path for me, I make this request. The implication is please live long and stable lives. Okay. So thank you. Yeah, there we go. So if you have time on Monday, Doris sending us her greetings there. Louise is sending love. Okay, thank you. If you have time on Monday, we'll go over this, the PDF also. And anyway, we'll continue next week. So yeah, this last section, sort of, sometimes the words may sound a bit glib, like, what is he talking about? So if you go back and read it a second time, maybe things become a little more clear. Anyway, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you either Monday or next Saturday.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Venerable George.